Hey everybody. So I want to talk about the self-titled album by Blink-182. I'm a day late on this. As of recording, it's the 19th of November, 2018. I don't know. I just kind of wanted to talk about my feelings towards the album. I talk about it every now and then because people are asking me, certain questions that just kind of relate to it. But whether or not you follow me or if you've only followed me for a little while, I just figured I'd talk about realistically one of the most important albums of my life. It came out at a very, very influential time. I was just turning 14, which is honestly one of the most important times in someone's life, because that's kind of when you're really discovering who you are a little bit. You're kind of figuring out the things you like and the things you don't like. And I had discovered Blink a couple years before. Actually, the year before, like early that year, like early 2002 is when I started getting into Blink and kind of realizing at the time how much I was liking this alternative rock and pop punk stuff like that. And I was really excited for this album because it was the first Blink album I felt like I was kind of a part of, as far as the excitement and just waiting in general and seeing all the updates, especially for this album, the way that it was recorded in this person's home. So much of it was recorded at the time and posted to their website, which was not something that was very common back in the day. And frankly, it's not even super common these days. I really wish it was, because I love seeing those behind the scenes videos. But I was so excited for so many of these songs. Every time they would post a clip, I would watch it over and over again. I remember hearing them recording Not Now. I remember seeing clips of Here's Your Letter and I Miss You and Feeling This and, others. And I was so excited because it really did sound very different from Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and even from the Boxcar Racer stuff, which came out the year before. I mean, it sounded like that, but, amplified even more. And, I mean, now that I've been listening to Blink for, 15 plus years, I've grown to realize why things have changed and why things went in certain directions. I mean, I feel like Tom DeLonge really took the reins a bit on this album. Because, I mean, you can see where they ended up, after this. I mean, Tom's always trying to do something different. That's not always the case with Mark. I mean, I think that Mark would always, not always, but I think that Mark would be happy, just writing a decent pop punk song with a few friends. I think Tom really tries for more, and he likes to think outside the box, and he doesn't really want to do the same thing twice, which, I can respect both things. They're both good for different reasons. I really think the reason that we got such a shift in direction was a bit more because of Tom. I mean, obviously, things kind of naturally go a certain way, depending on how you feel, and you can hear a lot of maturity in both of their lyrics. I mean, the Mark stuff and the Tom stuff, just listen to like Stockholm Syndrome, like both of those, both of their parts are, very dark. And, so it's not just Tom, it's definitely both of them, but I think that Tom's part played just a little bit more in, making a total 180. And I really am very glad that they tried something different, because even today, I still think the album is just as solid. I think it's the best album that they've ever done. Jerry Finn was on the album. Jerry is so much a part of the Blink sound. It's tragic that he's no longer with us, but he brought a lot to that band and really brought out what was special in them, and they owe a lot to him for this album and a couple of the other ones. There were some songs that, were like immediate favorites, like Asthenia and Always, but, some songs like Down and Obvious really really grew on me a lot more over the years. You know, you just kind of gravitate towards certain things for certain reasons. You know, I love the obvious is written baritone. You know, it's one of the reasons why I really want to, you know, get into that a bit more with my own music. And, you know, Down became such an important song for me because I was actually at the concert where they played Down for the first time ever, which was really cool. It was the first show of the Dollar Bill tour that they did, you know, right after the album dropped. Actually, no, it was right before the album dropped. I didn't know the song at the time, but because obviously they hadn't released the song yet even at that point. I think at that point the only songs that were released were Feelin' This and maybe Go, maybe Violence too, I don't remember. You know, that Down became just an important thing for me because it was also my first Blink concert, and it just always brings back such great memories. The songs themselves, they sound fantastic. I think the mix on them is really great. You know, I don't think there's really anything I would change on anything like that. I think every part really has its time to shine. You know, the drums sound fantastic, the bass sounds great, the guitar sounds really great on a lot of different tracks. You know, like Asthenia, like I was talking about, has a very, very cool guitar sound. I remember them saying that they were playing it through an amp that had like a dying tube or something that kind of gave it a real like transient kind of sound, like a almost like spacey kind of sound, which is really cool. They were very experimental. They were very open-minded with the whole album, and I thought they got a lot of really great results. I can still listen to this album today and love it just as much as I did back then. There's really nothing bad I can say about the album. I mean, I wish they continued on with this sort of pattern. You know, if there was never a hiatus, you know, and they were still as close as they were back then, you know, I can only imagine the direction it could have gone had they not, you know, had their fights and you know, their own desires to branch out. You know, not that I dislike Angels and Airwaves or Plus 44, but, you know, I always get a little bit curious on, you know, what could have happened with Blink if they stayed together, because even Neighborhoods really isn't the same sort of vibe. I mean, you can definitely tell that it's very different from how they spent their time in the self-titled album, where they, you know, they spent so much time together all the time, writing things and bouncing ideas off of each other. In Neighborhoods, you could tell, you know, how disconnected it was, you know, how things were written, you know, and then sent miles and miles away to somebody else over the internet. You know, they're not actually really communicating, you know, that sort of thing. You can really tell that there was a magic on this album, and, you know, I feel it every single time I listen to it. There's really no track on this album that I think is really weak. You know, I mean, Fallen Interlude is you know, its own sort of thing, but it's an interlude. You know, it's short. It's I think it's definitely like a Travis sort of thing. You know, a bit for him to show, you know, what he was into at the time, and, you know, I totally get that. That's cool with me. But yeah, I mean, it really just is as perfect of an album, I think, as Blink can do. And I really think it was their pinnacle. I really don't think that they will ever be as good as that album. And, you know, they've had a lot of other great albums, you know, mostly in the past, but I don't know. I really think that everything really fell into place with this album, and I think that, you know, for a lot of people, it's really an album that they hold close, you know, close to them, because it really just, it feels very sincere. It doesn't feel dishonest. You know, you can tell that they were just writing what they wanted. They weren't writing to please anybody. They were writing just to get their emotions out, and that's always what makes the best albums, in my opinion. You know, they don't care if one person listens to it or if, you know, 5 million people listen to it. You know, as long as they were writing what was honest to them, and, you know, what came naturally. You know, that's really what counts. And, you know, you can tell when an album is not written that way. I don't think Neighborhoods was written that way. I don't think California was written that way. I do think that Dogs Eating Dogs was on the same sort of page. You can tell that there was a little bit of that same magic that was on the self-titled album, but, you know, just a little shorter. And, you know, it was rushed. You know, I mean, for example, it took Blink almost a year to record this album, but they recorded, you know, that EP in like a month. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Definitely let me know what you think of the album. If you have any thoughts that, you know, maybe contradict mine, or, you know, if you agree with what I say, you know, definitely leave them below. I'm curious to see what you guys think. And if you like this sort of video, you know, like my looking back on an album kind of thoughts, you know, leave some suggestions. You know, it doesn't have to be Blink. It can be, you know, any number of things. You know, I've listened to plenty of albums back then. You know, I've even considered doing some albums, like ones I technically don't even listen to anymore. You know, maybe like some pop punk bands that I actually kind of fell out of love with. You know, and just kind of looking back on that. You know, I'd be interested in doing something like that. So let me know what you think. And, you know, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. What the hell is going on? See you later.